2008 is the 60th anniversary of the NHS. C&D is in Poole, Dorset to visit pharmacist Edgar Bryant, who registered in 1948, to find out about life as a pharmacist back then and how it's changed over the years. Hello Edgar, thanks for seeing us today. You registered as a pharmacist in 1948, but how did you get into pharmacy in the first place?
Well, we were brought up in Somerset, and my brother was certainly involved in the war, but I used to have a grandfather that was suffering from chronic bronchitis, and the only thing he could have in those days was, there were no antibiotics of course, it was just a liquid medicine which you swallowed and hoped would do some good. He lived with us, and every week or, I'm not sure whether it's a week or a fortnight, but certainly in time, every fortnight we'll say, was my turn to go and fetch this medicine from the nearest doctor who did his own dispensing in a place called Martock in Somerset. And for that errand, I used to get sixpence. So that shows what inflation does. So then we had the situation with the war, and I registered, I think, in 1941 as a prospective candidate for His Majesty, as it was then. But we were allowed to have an exemption from doing military service if you were either a doctor, a dentist, or a pharmacist. So I was allowed to go to Nottingham by virtue of this statute.
So were you ever called up to do any kind of service?
Not until after the war. I was there from 1945 to 1948.
At Nottingham?
Pardon?
At Nottingham?
At Nottingham. But virtually as soon as I'd qualified, I did get called up. I got called up to a place in a pharmacy in Shrewsbury, and I was there for about 3 months, because I was actually at Bridge North, had a RAF camp there, and I had to do my square bashing like everybody else. So from that, from the square bashing, I did about 18 months in the RAF as a conscription candidate, really, which everybody else was in the same position. And of course the thing about the doctors and the pharmacists being exempt, of course, was all shoved aside. We went to, I was posted to RAF Hospital at Rawton, near Swindon, which was then the biggest hospital in the RAF. I believe it's closed now, but we did the Medical Research Council trials there for streptomycin and para-aminosalicylic acid, PAS. So I was working more or less like a civvy, but dressed in RAF uniform.
After your national service, what happened then?
Well, I came out and did a bit of locum work in Worcester. And then I did a further stint with Leicester's, the chemists of Nuneaton. They were quite a big concern, actually, although they were privately owned, but still doing pharmacy.
So what was your locum rate back then?
The locum rates back then, they'd be based on something like about £750 a year.
How long did you locum for?
I locumed for about 2 or 3 years, and then joined, as it was then, Glaxo Laboratories as their medical rep for Dorset and Somerset and part of Hampshire. Meanwhile, we'd been fairly productive. We had 5 sons, of course, but at that stage I think we had 2, but that's how progress gets by.
So how long did you work for Glaxo for?
From about 1953 till 1959. And I probably would have stayed with them, but we lived here, but my territory extended down to Minehead and Porlock in North Somerset. And I was away, of course, about 1 week in 3, which wasn't terribly satisfactory for home conditions, especially with a large family. So that was the time when I left Glaxo and bought my own business. I always had a month's holiday with Glaxo. They were very liberal to their staff in those days, but we thought they were, when the average holiday period was perhaps a week or a fortnight. So that was a bonus of those years.
How long did you have the pharmacy for?
From late 1959, in fact it was Christmas 1959, until 1988.
And did things change a lot in that time?
Yes, I mean, in the early part of, you're talking about the early session now. With Glaxo, of course, we were concerned with the introduction of corticosteroids, and also, of course, penicillin and streptomycin. And then the American firms came in with like terramycin and aureomycin. So, yes, I mean, things did change. Like, in fact, I used to say to clients sometimes, because they were always looking for a bottle of something. They've been used to that in the past. But most of the medications these days, and in 1988, would have been solid prescriptions, tablets, pills, that type of thing. Liquids on the way out completely.
What do you think of pharmacy in 2008?
Precarious. Yes, I think in 2008 you've got a tremendous number of pharmacy outlets that represent just a small proportion of a large supermarket. Although I don't think that's very good for pharmacy, and I don't think it's very good for the public. So, you know, I wouldn't be terribly happy about being a pharmacist today.
What does pharmacy need right now?
Well, they need a few strong people, of course, in mind, if not in body.
Has the NHS been positive for pharmacy?
No, I don't think it has been particularly positive or helpful. They talk about using the pharmacist more and more and more, and the public certainly do take up that challenge. I think to some extent it has, but it's a very fine balance. The ministry always saying, you know, go and see your pharmacist and all this, but there's no pay on the end of it. We're just nice people.
Thanks for meeting with us today, Edgar.
My pleasure. That's fine. That's just my pleasure.